Awesome. So, a very warm welcome to all the attendees. On the first day of the Smart Protein Summit 2021, I have exciting guests with me, innovators, entrepreneurs, trailblazers, and the session that we are here today. The last session for the day is Blazing a Trail, Plant-Based Startups at the Frontier of Innovation. I am Shardul Dabir, the Innovation Specialist with the GFI India team. And with me, I have, like I said, 5 excellent innovators, entrepreneurs, trailblazers who we are going to hear from. It's going to be a panel discussion. If you have any comments, please put them in the chat. We are not taking any audience questions because we want to hear from our expert speakers throughout the session today. And it's quite a pleasure. So firstly, let me start introducing our speakers for the day. We'll start with Akanksha Ghai, who's the co-founder of BVeg Foods. Akanksha has a deep interest in healthy living, nutrition, and diets, and she has pursued a degree in nutrition and dietetics. The ill effects on animal agriculture and the benefits of plant-based proteins are what drive her, and the co-founder of a company called BVeg Foods, which is basically looking into high extrusion manufacturing of plant-based meats, currently one of its kind company in India. We are very glad to have Akanksha in our ecosystem in the GF Ideas India community and on our panel today. Next up, we have Priyanka, who's the founder of Live Green Company, a Chilean food tech startup that applies artificial intelligence, machine learning, and technology to blend nature, science, and research and development for plant-based food research. And she's creating the foods for the future of planet and future of humanity. She's been named as one of the 100 women leaders of Chile for 2020 and 2021. And the Live Green Company is the only Latin startup on Clean Tech's Global 52 watch list. First food tech company from Latin America to be certified B Corp, amongst other achievements. Next up, we have Abhishek Sinha, who's the co-founder and CEO of Goodwood. Abhishek is a chemical engineer and ex-senior taxation bureaucrat. He has wide expertise in strategic alignment, product development, process engineering, and regulatory landscape. The ethical benefits of a plant-based lifestyle are the major driving forces behind Goodwood's activities, and with a focus on price, taste, and shelf life for its products at room temperature, Goodwood has a unique and distinct approach to mainstream plant-based meat alternatives across the globe. Next up, we have Abhirangan, who's the founder of Goodmylk and has been a champion of animal rights in India since the age of 16. Abhay originally created each of the Goodmylk products along with his mother in their kitchen. But their plant-based foods now reach thousands of families across the country, and Goodmylk is one of the leading plant-based dairy companies of India now. They create delicious, functional, and accessible dairy products that are made from plants and are designed to replace animal-based dairy products at scale. And last but not the least, we have Rohan Mirchandani, who's the co-founder at Epigamia, and Rohan's primary role at Epigamia is to lead the overall business development and strategy to create unique program proposition with the outline that the next big influx is going to happen in the FMCG space. He enjoys the opportunity in his native India and what the market presents, and at the same time, he basically wants to go global and also mix the East and the West. So we are quite excited to have this very exciting panel with us today, and to begin with, basically, right diving directly into the session and getting started. We'll get started with Abhishek and Abhay first. So my question first for you, Abhishek, is that you've been the early movers, right? And I've asked this discussion, I've just asked this question to you in probably 3-4 sessions now over the past 3 years. You've been leading the change. You've been building this company. Similarly, Abhay, you've been building the plant-based dairy company, Goodmylk, Good Dot. They've been the early movers. You've probably inspired dozens of entrepreneurs to take similar journeys, similar paths. You've literally blazed the trail in the sense of the word and sense of the session. So can you tell us a little bit about these two categories are quite different. So starting with Abhishek, can you share your key learnings from your journey over the past 5-7 years? How has the Indian market evolved over the past 5-7 years since you started? What has really changed in terms of innovation in the ecosystem, the awareness among consumers, and the accessibility of these alternatives? You're on mute, Abhishek.
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, thanks Shardul for the introduction. all of us are in this together, right? We are building this space, and this is a massive space, both in terms of potential as well as the challenges what it is envisioning to tackle. So that's why the growth is exceptional, but the magnitude needs to be scaled up significantly in the years ahead. Having said that, we went by a very clear hypothesis. We didn't do any top-down survey. We understood that in India people eat meat. I'm talking one more for the plant-based meat space, primarily for the taste. And by and large, no one wants to intentionally hurt animals. So if you can get a solution wherein you enjoy the taste and nutrition of meat without harming animals, India is potentially one of the largest or most evolved market for this kind of a product. So that was the hypothesis. Very interestingly, we have seen not just from the metros, from the interior part of India. If you go to Bihar, Nagaland, Jharkhand, Kerala, people are open to trying out plant-based meat. So basically, this presents a massive opportunity. We always realize there is a latent need which needs to be manifest. How do you manifest that? By giving them credible alternative at an affordable price point. So that had been our effort, and we are seeing people are ready for that now, with more and more companies entering into the space, more innovation coming into the space, and also a lot of category creators in the space, like for example Imagine Meat with Ritesh and Janelia. They are creating a lot of buzz in terms of getting the category being more aware in the hinterlands and in the metros. So overall, this is really creating awareness about the category. So there are innovative companies, innovative products, and increased awareness. And as I said, the lead was always real and latent. Now it is going to manifest. And we have to step up our volumes to meet the increasing demand. So we see very, very clearly significant tailwinds in this space.
Thank you, Abhishek. Abhay, similar question to you. The plant-based dairy category is definitely exponentially growing globally, right? How do you see the similar category growing in a country like India, which has so many connotations when it comes to dairy, and we've heard quite of those thoughts today during our panels as well.
Right. Thanks, Shardul. I think solving for plant-based anything in India, dairy particularly as well, is to have an India-focused approach and is to build for India and win within India. And I think that can be scaled up globally. But I think Indians have a different relationship with dairy than maybe some of the other countries do. I think our approach has always been to sort of be focused on making it convenient and affordable and tasty, which is sort of gather has sort of become the go-to advice a lot of people give to plant-based startups is to just focus on taste, convenience, and price. I think that's a great way to put it. And we've been focusing really hard on making that happen. I think the demand exists, like Abhishek very eloquently said, from everywhere within India. But the challenge is to make sure someone in X part of the country is able to access our product, which is the first challenge. I think the defeatist approach is to say that there are not many people in concentrated in a certain area who are ordering large number of large volumes of these products. But I think the opportunity there is to just see right now, despite how early the movement is, just a massive number of people around the country who may not live in a metro city, but definitely want these products and are willing to pay for it. I think that's great. I think in terms of what is different, there's a lot more investor awareness, I think. And when we were raising our first round, there was practically no one willing to write a check to plant-based dairy startups. I think the movement was very focused on plant-based meat at that point, even though all of us are very early. I think another key difference is maybe the number of pipelines that exist, thanks to the work of people like Akanksha, who are speeding up go-to-market for a lot of companies. Otherwise, you have to go to a traditional dairy manufacturer, say, at least I'm talking about plant-based dairy here, and then convince them to take you on, despite your relatively smaller volumes compared to, say, their dairy lines, because the machines are kind of similar. But both in terms of manufacturing and distribution today, the pipelines are a lot more democratized. They are, you can start with a fairly low volume. You can test out products in the market. You can try products and axe them quickly if they don't work, or really scale them up from there. So the ecosystem is a lot more robust in terms of incubating and nurturing products all the way to scale. Of course, a long way to go before I think we make a dent in the large animal sort of consumption that India is seeing right now. And of course, I think people are predicting that it is going to increase over time. I think one thing that is something that's we're very cognizant about is, if we start to eat like some of the rest of the countries in the world do, we're going to have a severe food crisis, and hopefully plant-based and alternative proteins can solve that.
Absolutely, Abhay. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's a very valid point. People like Akanksha, other ecosystem enablers who are getting the necessary acceleration for the early movers is quite a distinct thing that we are seeing in the past year and a half, and probably in the next couple of years we'll keep seeing for more and more early stage startups to get their products into the market. Thank you so much. My next question is actually for Rohan, who's the third panelist. So Rohan, at Epigamia, you've always focused on being the activist of taste, right? Plant-based has burst onto the scene as a category in the last few years, and it has been booming. So basically, what are the key decisions for you to enter into this category, the plant-based category? What were your motivators? Can you tell us a little bit about your journey of having, entering into this category, your plans for this category, and how is it currently going?
Yeah, sure. First off, thanks, Shardul, and thanks, GFI, for the invite. So excited to be here with everyone. See a lot of friendly faces and good folks. We're sort of, and I'm in awe of my fellow panelists who I consider the real, movers and shakers and activists. I think we're the advocates, as you mentioned. Our activism is in taste. And we've been around for some time, a little longer than a bunch of the folks on here. And our sort of mission when we started off was to contemporize this very traditional dairy industry that exists in India, and do it through products, and the power of ingredients. And I'll talk about that in a second. What brought us to sort of our plant-based journey and our sort of self-awareness. It's funny because we. We're probably the only one that we have both. We have dairy products as well as plant-based products, and we've got one side of the coin that hates on us, thinking we're plant-based activists, and then we've got the other side of the coin that hates on us, thinking we're dairy folks, and we're just like, there has to be some coexistence before the transition happens, and we feel that's our role that we need to play in the education and the awareness as we create habits and we transition. Our mission was to take, as I said, contemporize the traditional dairy industry. And for us, that meant, taking the good old Shrikhand and making it with lower sugar and making it Greek yogurt. Shrikhand became Greek yogurt. Punjabi lassis became thick Greek yogurt smoothies. We had our own take on Rishti Doi, and that's what started our journey. And for us, dairy was always an ingredient. It wasn't, when we were contemporizing dairy, the idea was to focus on products and dairy being an ingredient. And our plant-based journey, of course, came with the founding team. When we launched Epigamia, it was 2014, 2015. The conversation around plant-based had not become as mainstream as it is today. And I think we personally, had our own sort of awakening as to what we see the plant-based, and we believe that's the direction. There's a lot of folks, of course, we want to do the right thing. There's the animal activism and also saving the environment. We also have to understand that a larger population will only be sold on taste and health benefits at the end of the day, right? That's how we're going to transition that larger population. I think that's where there's a collective here that's trying to group together and move the needle in that direction. And for us, what came out was our brand stands for the power of ingredients. And if dairy is just one of our ingredients, why can't coconut be an ingredient? And why can't other plants be an ingredient? And that's what sort of, aside from the awareness that we saw as the founders of this company and directionally, and also feedback we got from consumers, we realized that we could, our place in the plant-based space is to unleash the power of ingredients when it comes to taste activism. And that's sort of what led our journey to this direction. And we're excited to sort of play our role. And I think our role is more the transition role. And we're happy to sort of play that role as we go forward as part of this collective. So very excited to do that.
Fantastic, Rohan. You mentioned a couple of great points. One is the balance act of dairy versus plant-based dairy, and having to basically create consumer awareness and category awareness, balancing for both. At the same time, looking at dairy as an ingredient. I think a lot of entrepreneurs who want to probably look at strategy for the next few years of growth would find that insightful. Next up, we'll go to Priyanka. Priyanka, you've had a fascinating and truly unique story, right? Bringing Indian indigenous and ancestral wisdoms to the global plant-based landscape. I'm sure the audience would love to know a little bit more about where this all began. I know you started up in Santiago, Chile, but you have Indian origins. Can you tell us a little bit about key differences between those two ecosystems in terms of innovation, and also maybe tell our audience a little bit about what is Charaka?
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much, and all the panelists on this call. I think I've been following your journey far from 18,000 kilometers, but I think you all are doing a phenomenal job. So I'll start off with a little background or a backstory as to why even Live Green Co started. Live Green Co started with a very personal need that our family had adopted a baby girl, and when she came home, she was just 3 months old. And I was the senior manager of grocery at Target, and that is the time when I actually started to look at food labels. And because when you were not providing a baby so young, what you could I would say natural nutrition from the mother, you always try to feed the baby or try to give that child the best possible nutrition. And that's, I would say, the kickstart for how we wanted to start Live Green. So we went to the very core of the issue and said, how can we disrupt the way food is being made in the first place? Why do we have to use so much of additives? Like, what is the reason? Like, we consume food for health. And that is the reason why we started Live Green Co. In terms of what is Charaka and what does Live Green Co do is, Charaka, in fact, is the name of the father of Ayurveda. So we really looked at, when I was working for Target, but working out of India, suddenly things started becoming super ingredients, like millets one day, sorghum the other day, kurkuma the other day, and it did not really make logical sense to me. And that's when I realized that actually there is a lot of ancestral knowledge in the East, which hasn't been documented and hasn't been validated from a scientific biotechnology lens, and that is what we should be doing. And in fact, the Tulsi Gowda winning the environmental Padma Shri, I think I was super excited or delighted yesterday to actually see that there's a lot of knowledge that we tend to discard, and that is what we are not doing with Live Green. So what Live Green Co or Charaka does is, it's a technology platform that has a huge database of traditional wisdom, or ancestral wisdom as we call it. We use biotechnology across various parameters to be able to understand ingredients to their core, and finally use machine learning to be able to discover more ingredients with similar properties. And the core of Charaka is to create plant only food, where it is, yes, replace the eggs, the animal meat, and the milk and the dairy, but also how do we make it good by also replacing the additives that are currently used in the industry. So that is what we do. I would say we are a Chilean, the company that started in Chile, but we have global presence. In fact, India is our technology headquarters, and we are actually looking at growing the team in India. And and that's what we do.
One more quick follow-up to that question would be, what kind of key differences do you see now that you have a back-end presence in India as an innovation ecosystem? Both countries, I'm sure the plant-based food category is growing, but being in the unique place of having seen the Western market, the US market, probably European markets in terms of the growth of plant-based meat, eggs, dairy applications, how do you see India's story shaping up in the next
I
few
think
years?
India, I would say when I came to Chile in 2018 is when I came here. Epigamia is actually one of the early companies that I saw when I was working at Target in Bangalore. It was being sold in our cafeteria. So I think the journey of the plant revolution in India has just started. I would say it is at least 12 years behind the West, and at least 5 years behind Latin America. And that is the difference I see. Having said that, I think the potential of the market of $1 billion, I think it is not about the market size, but what excites me that I am looking at India very, very soon is because it's about the impact you can give. If you're talking about 10 billion people and you're talking about approx 2 billion people in our own country, the impact that we can provide to sustainability is huge. And with all of us here, I think we need to crowd this panel because I don't think we would be scratching the surface even in the next 10 years. So that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. I think I completely agree with you. The immense opportunity to have impact in a country like India is what has motivated me to work in this sector as well. Fantastic. So let's move on to Akanksha, who's our fifth panelist. Akanksha, you have chosen a massive gap to solve for, in the infrastructure and the value chain of plant-based foods and plant-based meats in particular, that which is high moisture extrusion. And it's obviously needed to accelerate this category, to help other entrepreneurs create these products, get them to the market. And dozens of potential entrepreneurs are definitely planning to probably collaborate with you in the coming days. And it's also expensive at the same time to solve for this gap because it takes a lot of investments. It's risky because you're the first mover of sorts. And can you tell us a little bit about being the first mover, building the category awareness, and why is this all quite important from a BVeg Foods perspective and starting this company?
Thank you so much, Shardul, for your question. First of all, I really appreciate representing our company, BVeg Foods, as at this prestigious platform. I've been associated from GFI since past 3 years, since my inception days, I would say. And if I talk about our company, BVeg Foods, we're just not building the infrastructure. Our idea is to enable and unleash the ecosystem for the entire plant-based industry in India. To truly answer your question, I would say manufacturing of plant-based meat specifically have been a major bottleneck, not only from the Indian market but also from the Indian international market as well. And it has been well recognized by the forerunners like Beyond Meat and Impossible, to early stage entrepreneurs who are eyeing this segment, I would say. Since the product category is fairly new and unlike the conventional meat or the basic vegetarian products, which comes very handy to people, plant-based meats, I would say they take a lot of time and a lot of R&D, to create, create a good product behind it. At the same time, the technology is fairly new, hence setting up a processing unit becomes very, very capital intensive. I would like to say that as a company, we are envisioning to offer a complete end to end solution from concept to market, which comprises of everything from product development to ingredient sourcing, manufacturing, private labeling, packaging, all under one roof. We are aiming to be the only dedicated plant based meat manufacturers in our country. With the center of excellence, with the latest machinery of high moisture extrusion or HME, whatever you would name it. The whole idea is to create not just one product for us. Be it being co-mans, our idea is to create an entire plant-based menu to choose from, where it's just not the ethnic products or the non-conventional, the Western products, nuggets or burger patties. The whole idea is to create an entire array from people to pick and choose from according to their taste, preferences, needs to talk about. And in order to help this, we're not just planning to help the renowned FMCG companies or multinationals. Our doors are open to even entrepreneurs who are eyeing this segment. I would say my core business is to co-create and co-develop products with our clients worldwide by understanding their taste preferences, geographies, target market. Is just, I would say, our we would play to our strength, which is co-manufacturing, and the other companies can play to theirs, which is marketing and selling, which is not probably ours. So that is the business model, which I am aiming it to be a backbone of the entire ecosystem for plant-based solutions in India. I would just sum it up with one line that people do not reinvent the wheel because we're doing it for you.
Thank you so much, Akanksha. That's a great sum up, and I think those plans sound fantastic. And we hope that many more, early stage entrepreneurs are able to collaborate with you, and multiple other entrepreneurs like you who are thinking about plant-based dairy, plant-based eggs, other categories are also able to take inspiration from what you've done so far. Wonderful. So my next question is actually for Abhishek. Abhishek, we've talked about the past 5 6 years, what your journey has been like. Let's talk about the future, and it's kind of a twofold thing, right? There's a domestic growth story there, that Goodwood is pursuing. At the same time, you're selling in multiple countries. You've recently raised around from Sixth Sense Ventures, which is India's one of the most well-respected venture capital funds. At the same time, you're seeing massive interest in the global markets as well for these products made in India. So there's a lot of potential there as well. What would you say, and probably advise entrepreneurs, or based on your experiences so far in these twofold kind of markets, about Indian brands building for the world, and what would be your thoughts on the opportunities that are being created by the growth of this sector for similar kind of companies? You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, Shardul. So I think there are two parts to the question. First of all, how do you cater to the local demand as well as the global demand, right? So all of us, especially in the plant-based meat space, we need to realize that what we are trying to disrupt, we are trying to disrupt the animal meat industry, right? So the animal meat industry can take various forms, right from a chicken which can be consumed in a village in India, right up to the Michelin star restaurant in New York. So that's the big marketplace. So what happens? Why that meat industry is so big? Because it's versatile. The base products are versatile. It can take any form. So thereby, the plant-based meat companies, their focus should be, doing R&D on the base products. Develop a chicken alternative, develop a beef alternative, develop a pork alternative or a fish alternative which is in the base form. So that is the largest market segment. Once you do that, then the culinary part gets kicked in, which is very easy to manage, relatively easy to manage. Then you can just go and go to the different markets, and you just need the culinary skills. So just focus on the core R&D. That is going to be the focus. That has been our focus right from day zero, and we are not stopping. Continually you will see in very few months a lot of very, very interesting products which will be launched in Indian as well as in international market. What is very good about Indian companies, especially the Indian ecosystem, is that we have excellent talent, we have great agricultural resource, and most of the time we are just exporting commodities, whereas we have to export value added products which gives us revenue, forex, as well as revenue to the farmers, value addition. So I would say, going ahead, even backward integration. You should have protein extraction plant, big protein extraction plant. We should not export mung bean. We should export mung bean isolates or millet protein isolates, those kind of stuff. So it's a huge, huge opportunity. So we are focusing on both. We are trying to be the meat replacement, and that opens us all the opportunities within India and outside India. So that is our focus area. Having said that, the second part of a query, could you repeat? I'll just finish that part. Yeah. Your second part was?
Sure. Basically, the two markets, right? Separate markets, the domestic market and the global market. How do you see both of them evolving? And
Yeah,
basically,
right.
other Indian brands, which are now is an opportunity for us because of the creation of the sector to for Indian brands to basically tap into this global exports opportunity as well.
Lot of interest, lot of
So how do you see it?
I think lot of interest. Of course, we were sixth sense, like we were like really lucky to get a great investor on a cap table. And very interestingly, we are so kicked that the spike in the demand was unanticipated when we activated our channels. So again, a larger round is also in the offing, and that is, and every fund out there, who are of worth, they are looking at investable companies out there. So I mean to say, if you are going with a very R&D intensive plan, or even as a branding plan, I think there's a lot of money where people are looking to put inside the companies. So I think it's a exciting time. In the next 1-2 years, you will see an explosion of capital infusion in this space. So be ready, work hard, because there are huge opportunities that are going to come by. Yeah.
That's fantastic news because through a lot of our initiatives, the India Smart Protein Innovation Challenge, a couple of our other community engagement initiatives, we see a lot of young entrepreneurs who have similar questions. And I think success stories like yours, the fundraise, all of that is really promising and definitely gives assurance to a lot of these young entrepreneurs and minds. So that's glad
Yeah,
to hear. Next up,
absolutely.
moving on to
Yeah.
Priyanka. Basically, Priyanka, my question for you is as a female entrepreneur, right? And we have a couple of them on this panel, which is really great to see. But basically, as I was mentioning, the India Smart Protein Innovation Challenge, we see 50-55% of our participants, which are females, and they have students, researchers, scientists, and they often are thinking about the sector because they want to start a company or they want to perhaps work in a company, early stage company. And it's quite exciting to have role models like you in the sector. What would be your advice to a lot of these, young as female aspirant entrepreneurs in terms of your own learnings from your journey, because you don't have necessarily a food tech background or a biotech background, but you still built such a successful company, and that too in Chile, and so many awards and accolades. So perhaps through some of your learning so far, what would you advise to these young female entrepreneurs or students and researchers?
Thank you so much for that question, Shardul. So, first thing, everyone on this call, to build a tech company, you need not be a techie. That is, I would say, the A, because I don't think Steve Jobs is a computer engineer itself, and he did not build Apple alone. So, no company or no future technology is built alone, it's built by teams. But it's about, when you're building a team, it's about finding the opportunity, the problem, and finding the right people to support you in that journey. And you should be able to inspire people to work with you. So, having said that, my identification of the problem came to an extent from the role I was doing. So I was the senior manager for grocery at Target, and Target has presence of over 2,500 stores in the United States. I was a part of the Indian office in Bangalore, but I used to travel quite a bit because, yes, strategy decisions are made in Minneapolis, but execution happens out of India. So during that time is when I realized this issue. So I would definitely say, if you want to be an entrepreneur, age, sex, background, motivation, nothing matters, because you could ask all my panelists or any entrepreneur that you meet, including the chaiwala on the street. It is you grow with your learning and you learn every morning. So I think that is should be your takeaway. And if you want to join a startup company, definitely it is about join it because you will find passionate people. You will start creating impact. And when we talk about change, we talk about someone else coming and doing it. But you would be amazed that as small companies fighting with the biggest elephants in the industry, I think it is like the ant versus elephant story, right? So I would definitely encourage everyone. And as women in specific, I think women, we should go out there more. The only contribution that I can definitely offer, and I'm sure Akanksha would sign up as well, is we are hoping that we can make your journey better and share our learnings. So if you need any help, please find us on LinkedIn or through Shardul or anybody, and we should be able to support you. So, and that's how we make it better, right? Because we are starting the race late. The other gender has started the race millennia or centuries ago. We've just started, so we will help you with the head start of at least what we've got.
Absolutely. I just got a brilliant idea of getting you both as mentors for the India Smart Protein Innovation Challenge as well for some of the team. So probably that's a great start as well. So we'll actually go around the table now, and a question for all of you, right? The topic of the session is blazing the trail, right? And blazing the trail comes with a risk. You're doing something innovative. You're doing it for the first time. You're creating new markets. You're creating new categories. That's what we're trying to do at GFI India as well in terms of building a sector. And obviously, a lot of our work, a lot of the outputs of our work has risk associated with it, as does any other innovative area, right? So risk taking and facing those risks and mitigating and hedging those risks is a inherent component built in blazing the trail. So each of you, let's start with Abhishek first. If from 10 years from now, right, if you wanted to be at a specific place, like you had a specific vision for your venture for Good Dot, and you couldn't get there, what would be that one key risk or reason which would limit you from getting there?
I don't think, when you're trying to blaze a trail, you're driven by some larger value because you're leaving the highway to go on a short track and trying to find something which is of worth to you. So when you win, you gain confidence, you have the satisfaction, and when you lose, you gain experience. So still, you have still made a mark. So I mean to say, whether we do it or someone else does it, there's a pressing need for it to be done. That's period. It's bigger than Good Dot, it's bigger than GFI, it's bigger than all of us, because animals are banking on this transition and we can't fail them. So it doesn't matter, we are giving our best, we wish everyone the best, and we wish the category the best, because I think we deserve it, the animals deserve it, the planet deserves it. So there's no risk, go for it, have a drive, and just follow your calling. I think you will win.
That's definitely a great way of framing it. Abhay, would you like to probably point out maybe one or two factors or risks associated with being an entrepreneur in the plant-based dairy space, which might limit your company from being where you want it to be in the next 10 years?
Oh, so I mean, loved what Abhishek said. By the way, I mean, outside of any systemic risks, I think there is a risk in not executing fast enough, in taking too long to go to market, raising based on hype, not on substance. There's risks that come with sort of following what the industry is doing as a trend. I think Priyanka pointed out maybe is that one day it was Kokum, one day it was something else, one day it's going to be something else. Rather, not focusing on first principles, I think, is a risk. I mean, of course, we're all guilty of this, right? We look at what is shiny rather than what we already have. I think that's something that comes to mind. But overall, I think, yes, just not being able to execute, not being able to fix your supply chain, because these are novel supply chains that never sort of existed in the same way as we are building them. I think every individual entrepreneur can attest to this. I think not doing the boring, dirty things right, I think is a big risk. Focusing on flash, maybe that's another one. These things come to mind. But I think
Got it.
systemic risks will always exist regardless of the time frame we're in. Even large plant-based companies face systemic risk all the time. I wouldn't point out to anything specific. I think it's just a journey that we'll all go through.
Got it. Those are a bunch of risks. So for the next set of panelists, I think we have lesser and lesser risks. So probably for Rohan, would you probably limit it to a couple of risks, which you think would be the most important ones for entrepreneurs to think about in terms of hedging for or looking out for? What would
Yeah,
you personally think about?
I think Abhay covered all of them. I'm not left with anything. But first of all, I couldn't agree more with Abhishek. I think as Abhay said, also completely echo what he said. I mean, its reality is there's a journey that we've all sort of got onto, and now we're sort of sharing it, and we want to make sure that someone takes us to the finish line. Who gets there doesn't matter. So kudos to what you said, Abhishek. Totally echo that sentiment. I think I'm very biased in risk because we're a consumer brand. And at least we come from a world where success is going to be driven by consumers, right? Consumers when they actually shift their habits. And the risk that I see sort of 10 years out is on the distribution side. I think COVID sort of showed us that from a consumer product perspective, it just took distribution upside down, right? We came from a world of CPG, FMCG products where we were selling in general trade, modern trade, kirana shops. And now you saw e-com explode in food, which would have just never been seen or heard of. That kind of fundamental shift can happen even further. I don't know who it was before was talking about the agricultural capability that we have in the country. As technology gets embedded, and I'm saying that in a good way, distribution can shift completely. How consumers consume products can shift completely. Do we need consumer brands? Can people 10 years from now make some of this stuff at home? And these are fundamental risks that businesses like ours will face, especially in this extremely fast-moving ecosystem that we see going on. So for me, I think if I was to answer the question the way I think you said it, 10 years out, what is sort of a big risk that we see? I think distribution as it's evolving, where does it go? To me, that's a risk.
No, yeah, absolutely, Rohan. That's a great insight. Maybe Priyanka has something to add to it.
So for me, when I look at Live Green Co's perspective and the company's perspective, I think I would attribute the risk or the failure or not succeeding to ourselves and not really an external factor. Having said that, from an industry point of view, what I see is lacking or needs change is policy changes. So I see that we need quicker policy changes. We need funding that is going in, because if you are competing in trillion-dollar industries, you need access to capital and finance. And finally, I would definitely say education. I don't know if you all remember, but I clearly do. The Anda ad that I remember seeing on the TV as a child about how good it is. So if we have to talk about shift to sustainable food habits or diets, I think systemic changes need to be overcome by education, and that education has to happen at policy level. And also subsidies. But if you are trying to, we all talked about on this panel and multiple about pricing being so important and being affordable being so important, but at scale these are not only, and these are achievable only with economies of scale. So if this is such a growing industry without economies of scale, how are we trying to expect price parity without being handed over some kind of support? So I think for the industry and everyone on this panel and the upcoming companies, on their behalf, this is what I think is possible risks in 10 years.
Makes sense, Priyanka. Thank you so much. Akanksha, do you want to quickly
Yeah.
add your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I definitely believe and endorse what all the other panelists said. The alternate protein industry is at a very nascent stage, and it's evolving constantly. I believe the bigger risk would be to keep up with the continuous evolution, because today it's something else and tomorrow it's going to be something else. There would be changes in 10 years, I would say, in every prospect, be it products, technology, taste, and preferences. And it's very important to keep up keep pace up rapidly in order to, be there. That'll be the key. And specifically the food industry, it keeps you on its toes. Innovating products becomes a necessity here. So how quickly you innovate is the key here. That's all I believe.
Thank you, Akanksha. So, actually, keep staying with you, my next question is actually in line with how you're seeing the global market, right? I know you've recently been getting interest. We've worked with you on some of the partnerships globally and having those discussions going on. And the domestic market is definitely evolving, but at the same time,
Yes.
Indian companies going global. What are your can you talk a little bit about how those multiple markets are kind of shaping up and what your experience has been from BVeg Foods?
So happily would love to talk about it. As per my own experience, plant-based industry is fairly untapped, be it be it domestic or be it international market. And yes, as a service provider, as an ecosystem builder, yes, we eyeing and exploring both Indian and international market. In fact, last month was really crucial for me because on the domestic front, we had launched our products, launched our hot dog with 24/7, and on the international front, we had exhibited at the Plant Based World Expo in London. I'm glad to say that we received a really warm and positive response from both these prospects. And as per my own experience, I would like to put across the three factors which are required to boom this sector anywhere globally, I would say. A, the taste of products. B, price parity. And C, the innovation in products. With a lot of new age entrepreneurs coming, a lot of people, they do half done work and just haste to put their products in the market. For the heck of it, they put the products which are not that taste oriented, so there's no repurchase around that. When we talk about price parity, some of the products are really expensive, which do not help in getting a repurchase. You know, people very often would not take those products. One of the instances they would, but it's not going to get into a regular affair. Talking about the third important point, which is the innovation, is the key, because now everybody is just following the industry trend analysis and doing the key top 2 3 products. We need to break the shackles and give them some innovation out there which is not existing. So these are the three factors which I assumed, both at Indian international level, if you have to sustain, this would be the success mantra, I would say. And in order to work this, I love the fact that we're working in different markets because it gives us an overall experience, at the same time volumes and economies of scale whose benefits we pass on to our clients. And our in-house I would say our strong in-house capabilities, creating world-class products by using the most advanced technologies, they help us to create all these things. We plan to innovate and expand our product offering constantly, and also planning to work with varied protein sources, if I would say, not just soy or not just pea. There, as Priyanka had mentioned, there are a lot of key ingredients which are only, accessible to India, like millets. So working around those proteins is also the key which we closely eyeing at. Um, our idea is to be everywhere from farm to fork, have the complete linkage, even working around the backward integration to go forward too.
Quite exciting. Yeah, no, I'm sure. I think all of those reasons sound quite plausible and can be seen why global companies would take interest in an Indian plant-based meat manufacturer in terms of all of those backward linkages, the entire control over the value chain would definitely, like, one of the reasons why people are probably hesitant to uh, partner up with Indian companies for exports. Because one is obviously less innovative products, other is less control over the supply chain. So it does
Yeah.
make sense. My next question is actually for you, Rohan. As a founder of a new age FMCG company, which is making and pioneering a category like plant-based dairy, like plant-based yogurt specifically, right? And we heard some insights about price and taste and innovation from Akanksha. But does it always come down to taste and price, in your opinion? Because you're such a consumer-facing brand, you've been gathering a lot of those insights, thinking about them. Does it always come down to price and taste every single time, or are we talking about some other factors that are not currently accounted for? What do you think about, like, if you're talking about continuous growth, like exponential growth over the next few years, what other factors other than price and taste are we looking at? Maybe your thoughts on price and taste would also be very helpful here.
Yeah, I think price and taste starts the sort of journey for a consumer. And again, being the brand guy on this panel, I have to keep coming back to the consumer for a second. What's sort of critical to understand, and this is sort of entrepreneurship business 101 that we all learned, that just because you like something and your friends and family like it doesn't mean it can go into the larger sort of market, right? And one thing we sort of tend to forget, and I'm being harsh here, but human beings are pretty selfish. It's what's in it for me. And unfortunately, price and taste are sort of the genesis of what's in it for me. Of course, now the ancillary layers start coming into the picture, right? So the ancillary layer comes into the picture saying, okay, what's the price and taste? I've checked the box, but is it now healthy? Is this a better for me thing? And then I think, unfortunately, and I hate to say this on this panel, but unfortunately, the last thing on the rung is what is it for other people, right? So are we saving the planet? Are we saving animals? And I'm talking about the larger population. And I think this is a harsh reality check we all have to have. And those four sort of push up into what we call a brand, right? What does a brand stand for? And the brand is a function of what you associate yourself with and what you stand for. And I think that's something that has to play a very important role going forward, especially I think in our dairy space, which Abhay and I both in. I think Abhishek alluded to it earlier with meat. It's very clear. It's people are consuming it for the taste, right? And like Abhishek said, and I've seen the same insight. They're once the taste is cracked, they're very happy saying, "Oh, we don't want to harm animals." But that taste has to be cracked first, along with price. And I think that's super critical when you think about it. So yes, my answer to your question is price and taste start the journey, but then you have sort of these layers of what's in it for me, and I think health plays that ancillary role. And then finally, on the fourth rung, I think is what's in it for the others, and what's in it for the environment, and what's in it for the planet, etc.
Absolutely makes sense. I mean, at GFI, a lot of our attendees would relate. We always price, taste, convenience, and in that order. Sometimes other factors like health, environment would come fourth and fifth, and that's very true for a market like India as well. Would you say that's true for the metro cities and upwardly mobile cohorts in India as well, the millennials and people who are probably? Or how do you see those factors, the order of those factors shift as we tap into different cohorts in India?
Yeah, I think let's sort of. I'm a millennial. I'm the beginning of the millennials. I think we're still kind of useless. I think Gen Z is where it's at. I think that generation is definitely leading the path. But yes, I think they're the sort of early adopters. They're the ones that are more aware. And I'll speak more to my industry, which is dairy. I think dairy is very different from the non-veg sort of industry in India. You have to really distinguish those two cohorts. I can see Abhay nodding his head. We both know the challenges. The way I see it is, of course you have early adopters in metros, and only because they're a little bit more aware, they've got the access, unfortunately, that you don't see in the rest of the country. But if you sort of look at, if you look at where things are headed from a dairy perspective, you have to, again, coming back to my argument earlier about being, a selfish consumer, and the reality is most of the consumers are. When you look at what's in it for me, what's the alternate? The alternate today is dairy versus plant-based dairy. So why am I making that shift? Yes, that small cohort of Gen Zers and maybe some millennials have already made that shift because of the rung 3 and rung 4, which are, health and also because of the environment. But the first two aspects, the taste and price, why am I making the shift if I'm not getting taste and price? What's in it for me? And I think that's something that needs to be answered very importantly. I have an interesting sort of, analogy. It's a little out there, but, just bear with me for a second. If you look at the cell phones, literally forget the smartphones we have today, but we go back to like 1990 to 2000, that 10-year period, and you look at the United States and you see cell phone adoption. Now, in India, we had a very different thing because we didn't even have landlines. So people just jumped from landlines to cell phones. So that's a very different curve. But if you look at the American adoption of cell phones, where the alternate was a landline, it took a very linear 10 years to get there. And only once, because people said, why do I need one? I have a phone at home, and only once we got there, they saw the benefit in it, what's in it for me. And I think with dairy and plant-based dairy, it's going to be a similar journey. We're going to it's going to be a slow churn, but we're going to definitely get there. I think we're going to hopefully get there collectively. But once those questions start getting answered, and for us, I think with plant-based, the big tool in the kit is the health benefits. I think that's a big tool, and I think it's a much bigger tool than anything else. And once that awareness starts, and once that and already it's starting, once that shift happens, it should be an exciting way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for adding those insights, Rohan. My last question for the session is for Abhay. Abhay, so you're currently at Goodmylk undergoing a very exciting transformation, right? You've recently scaled up the company to multiple cities. You're probably solving for a lot of challenges that come along with it. You've announced a seed round extension as well over $1 million. What's working well for you currently as a plant-based dairy entrepreneur who's been at it for quite some time now, right? And you're at this cusp of scale up transformation. And where do you see the plant-based dairy category? As the theme for the entire session was, we saw a lot of insights on future, where things are going, but especially in terms of post-pandemic growth, now that COVID is over, probably settling down to an extent, we are seeing a lot of things normalize. So how do you see the plant-based dairy market specifically from now growing with the transformation of your company as well?
Thanks, Shardul. I think what's worked well for us is our insistence on following a fairly no-nonsense approach. I would say that means really creating a process of getting products or ordering products that are as friction-free as possible, given current constraints. So, be it delivering as a subscription. I think we're one of the first companies in this space to do subscriptions because it made sense. Dairy is one of the largest subscription businesses in the country, and everybody else was doing retail at that point. It didn't make a lot of intuitive sense. So I think a couple of insights like that, which is really just trying to recreate that dairy experience as much as possible so that your switching costs are lower. And then more recently, we removed all delivery charges in the 5 cities that we currently operate in. I think we've been able to bring down price of some of our products that we had launched earlier, owing to some small gains in the economies of scale that we were able to see with those products. I think moving forward, very much allude to what Rohan said, which is a great point as to what's in it for me. And I think that manifests really, especially in the large space of people in this country, in terms of price and health. I think taste is very important for, I think, early adopters or people who are trying to consume these products, but also, as we've seen with some of the other, products, like it could be even something like beer, taste isn't necessary. Taste is acquired in some sense, right? So yes, the intent is to create products that taste 99.9 or 100% like dairy. But I would say, I would put price a little higher for the average consumer. Of course, more discerning consumers may want taste. But I think the question we're trying to answer now is, yes, to Priyanka's point as well, which was that, yes, we face a systemic risk in terms of not having subsidies, being taxed higher. There are other risks like that. But I think it's still possible to achieve a price for plant-based milk, curd, etc., that is lower than the price of dairy today. I think it is simply trying to think differently from the supply chains that already exist. For example, with dairy, centralized manufacturing is a thing. You have to source decentrally, but bring them to a central plant, etc., chill it, process it, whatever. I think plant-based dairy can be different. Plant-based dairy products aren't derived from each other. You don't have to make plant-based milk to make plant-based curd. You don't have to make plant-based milk to make plant-based butter, etc. All these products are made from scratch. So I think just understanding this, these supply chains can be different. We don't necessarily have to quote-unquote leverage what is already out there. Well, that may be great for GTM. It may not be it may not be the thing that takes you to scale. It may not be the thing that takes you to beat, say, the market share of dairy, etc., in the Indian consumer's mindset and their wallets. So, we're trying to think about ways to actually beat the price of dairy, or, beat the price of whatever product in this space that we're trying to go after, and see if we can do it in the short term versus make promises that we're going to eventually do it and then taking our time to get there. I think it's a worthwhile exercise for us to see, can we get there now? And if we can, what does that look like? And I would imagine the supply chain there looks drastically different from what we conventionally believe is the way to do it. So I think I actually really loved seeing Goodwood in this space doing Good Do, right? And it's a great example of how you're finding your own distribution. And I think there's a lot of lessons one can take from that. We take a lot of inspiration from my fellow panelists here all the time. So those are some things that come to mind. I think the industry in plant-based dairy specifically has been very ingredients focused. Like earlier it was soy milk, and then it became almond milk. Today it's oat milk. Probably hemp milk is coming up now. There's going to be a variety of ingredients, but I think there's also this rise of companies that don't have an ingredient focus. I think Notco is a great example. There's going to be other companies, and Goodmylk, we call ourselves like a not very. I mean, our ingredients are important, but they're not the reason people buy our products, right? The reason people buy our products is because they work like dairy. So it doesn't really matter if your plant-based milk is made from bananas or cabbage or pineapple or oats or almonds. As long as it works like dairy and is clean label, I think people will transition, of course, given price and accessibility and other things are met. So these are some themes that we're thinking around. It's going to be a fun couple of years ahead.
Awesome, Abhay. That was my last question, but the last point you said actually wants me to ask, like, it's making me ask a question to Priyanka as well, being somebody who's pioneering ingredients and technology in terms of functionality, right? Like, that's a great point. We've been talking about this for years now, that think about not a hero ingredient per se, but think about functionality that these products are kind of delivering. And that's what a large part of your work is also looking at, Priyanka. So can you share more insights on how perhaps the work that you're doing with Live Green Co. Can benefit plant-based meat, eggs, and dairy companies in terms of functional ingredients and processes, etc.?
Sure. So I think I should confess that I am a veggie. I am a vegetarian. I love dairy. And for me, making that switch as a person or a consumer itself was challenging. So that's when we launched the Live Green Co. ice cream in Chile, which is our test market, and we compete with Nestle and Notco on the shelf. It is about how close can I, like, if you do a blind test, I should not guess the difference. So that I think is integral. But our other challenge was, yes, there's a lot of, I would say, literature that's coming about, hey, plant-based food is ultra processed, not really good for your health, meat is natural, milk is natural, blah blah blah. So that is where we have taken up it as a challenge at Live Green Co, that when we provide alternatives, they should mimic and be as close as the original, but also a clean label solution. And that's the reason why we went with a tech first approach and not really a brand, because we believe that our solution should be, we should be able to give these formulations to existing retailers and put it under their brand on their shelf at massive level across geographies and give us technology courtesy. And that is where we are looking at our impact. Because if you look at, say, the Beyond Meat as an example, they took like 12 years to even reach 400 million US dollars in revenue and needed a 1.6 billion US dollar raise and also an IPO, right? So we are looking at the world by 2030, the UN Sustainability Development Goals can only be achieved, which is very doubtful, if we do things like collaboration. And that's where the work that Akanksha is doing is it's refreshing, because only collaboration can get us to our target. And that is, I think, a common theme that you have seen on this panel. And yeah, so those are my 2 cents.
Thank you for adding those. And we also have Arun Deshpante, the Managing Director at Goodwood Institute India. You've already heard him a couple of times today. He also has some insights to share with the theme of our session. So Arun, on to you.
Oh, sorry, Shardul, were you calling on me? I'm just trying to figure out my internet situation here. But
yes,
I just wanted to thank everyone on this panel, obviously, but everyone throughout the day. We called this session Trailblazers, as we did last year, because I mean, several of you have been with this space, built this space since before GFI India even existed. You've really been genuinely blazing a trail. And as I've been saying throughout the day, I think it is surreal how far we've reached. All of you have been an integral piece of that, leading that transition, that transformation. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. And thank you everyone for joining us. I mean, we've had a really fantastic day. I couldn't have asked for anything better. So I just wanted to round out everything and say thank you on that, channel. So if you have anything further to add, please go ahead.
No, that's it. Thank you so much once again, Abhay, Akanksha, Rohan, Abhishek, and Priyanka for taking the time out and joining us and inspiring a lot of our members in the attendees and audience, and we look forward to having you going forward in our community as well. All of you, please join us tomorrow for day 2 of the Smart Protein Summit 2021, and have a great night. Bye. Take care.
Thanks. Thanks, Shardul. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.